Chapter 1: Resources and Development. Friends, everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, can be termed as resource. Figure 1.1. This figure explains the relationship of human beings with the physical environment, that is nature, technology, and institutions. The process of transformation of things available in our environment involves an interdependent relationship between nature, technology, and institutions. Human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to accelerate their economic development. Do you think that resources are free gifts of nature as is assumed by many? They may not. Resources are a function of human activities. Human beings themselves are essential components of resources. They transform material available in our environment into resources and use them. These resources can be classified in the following ways. A. On the basis of origin, biotic and abiotic. B. On the basis of exhaustibility, that is, renewable and non-renewable. C. On the basis of ownership, individual, community, national, and international. D. On the basis of status of development, potential, developed stock, and reserves. Figure 1.2. Classification of resources. Resources can be classified into two broad categories: natural resources and human resources. Natural resources are then subdivided into renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Under renewable resources, we have continuous or flow, example wind and water, and the second category under renewable is biological, which has another two categories: natural vegetation, that is forests, and wildlife. The non-renewable resources are classified into two categories: recyclable, example metals, and non-recyclable, example fossil fuels. The human resources are divided into only two categories. First, the structures and institutions, and second, quantity and quality. Activity. Identify at least two resources from each category. Types of resources. On the basis of origin, biotic resources. These are obtained from biosphere and have life, such as human beings, flora and fauna, fisheries, livestock, etc. Abiotic resources. All those things which are composed of non-living things are called biotic resources. For example, rocks and metals. On the basis of exhaustibility, renewable resources. The resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical, or mechanical processes are known as renewable or replenishable resources. For example, solar and wind energy, water, forests, and wildlife, etc. The renewable resource may further be divided into continuous or flow. The description is given in figure 1.2, which has already been explained to us. Non-renewable resources. These occur over a very long geological time. Minerals and fossil fuels are examples of such resources. These resources take millions of years in their formation. Some of the resources, like metals, are recyclable, and some, like fossil fuel, cannot be recycled and get exhausted with their use. On the basis of ownership, individual resources. These are also owned privately by individuals. Many farmers own land which is allotted to them by government against the payment of revenue. In villages, there are people with land ownership, but there are many who are landless. Urban people own plots, houses, and other property. Plantation, pasture lands, ponds, water in wells, etc. are some of the examples of resources ownership by individuals. Make a list of resources owned by your household. Community-owned resources. There are resources which are accessible to all the members of the community. Village commons, grazing grounds, burial grounds, village ponds, etc. Public parks, picnic spots, playgrounds in urban areas are de facto accessible to all the people living there. National resources. Technically, all the resources belong to the nation. The country has legal powers to acquire even private property for public good. You might have seen roads, canals, railways being constructed on fields owned by some individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. All the minerals, water resources, forests, wildlife, land within the political boundaries and oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles, that is 22.2 kilometers, from the coast, termed as territorial water, and resources therein belong to the nation. International resources. There are international institutions which regulate some resources. The oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone belong to open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these without the concurrence of international institutions. Do you know that India has got the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean, from that area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone. Identify some other resources which are international in nature. On the basis of the status of development. Potential resources. Resources which are found in a region but have not been utilized. For example, the western parts of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat, have enormous potential for the development of wind and solar energy. But so far, these have not been developed properly. Developed resources. Resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. The development of resources depends on technology and level of their feasibility. Stock. Materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to access these, are included among stock. For example, water is a compound of two inflammable gases, hydrogen and oxygen, which can be used as a rich source of energy. But we do not have the required technical know-how to use them for this purpose. Hence, it can be considered as stock. Reserves. Reserves are the subset of the stock, which can be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how, but their use has not been started. These can be used for meeting future requirements. River water can be used for generating hydroelectric power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. Thus, the water in the dams, forests, etc. is a reserve which can be used in the future. Activity. Prepare a list of stock and reserve resources that you are familiar with from your local area.